How's it going, you guys? So in this video I want to briefly discuss the two-factor model of sports performance popularized by strength coach Mark Rippetoes and discussed in pretty heavy detail in Mark Rippetoes' book Practical Programming for Strength Training, 3rd edition. Okay. He also touched on it in his first book, Starting Strength. What is the two-factor model of sports performance? The two-factor model of sports performance is: number 1, get strong. Number 2, practice your sport as the bulk of your training. Okay. So, what is the underlying philosophy behind the two-factor model? So, the underlying philosophy behind the two-factor model is that the majority of your conditioning should be coming directly from your sport and from practicing your sport, okay, no matter what sport it is. Because conditioning is specific to the sport, there should be no better way of improving your stamina, your cardio, your conditioning than practicing the skills within your sport practice itself. So, for example, if you are a jiu-jitsu athlete, you're a grappler, you're a wrestler, okay, the majority of your conditioning should be coming from sport practice. And really, no matter what sport you're doing, you should obviously be practicing your skills every single day, and when you can, multiple times a day. I mean, as an athlete, the majority of your training will be from skills practice anyway. And a lot of that skills practice is going to be increasing your aerobic threshold. It's going to be increasing your endurance, your power capacity, your lactic capacity, your lactic power, your glycolytic capacity. All of these metrics of endurance and stamina that you need for your sport will be trained by practicing your sport. And so that is number 1, is you get your conditioning from practicing the sport. And as I was going to say earlier, for example, if you're a grappler, you're a jiu-jitsu athlete, you're a wrestler, you're going to be doing a whole lot of live wrestling, a whole lot of live grappling, live rolling, where you and your opponent are maybe going 65, 75%, maybe you're going 100%, and you're battling for takedowns, you're, doing pass or sweep, trying your best to pass your opponent's guard, trying to submit your opponent's guard. And that is directly practicing the very skills that your sport is based around, while at the same time training the conditioning aspect that is directly required for that sport. If you are a basketball player, obviously doing drills, doing basketball drills, actually playing basketball games, shooting three-pointers, shooting from different distances. I'm not a basketball guy, just so you all know. My little brother is, so he could probably, maybe I should have him as a guest star or something in one of my videos. But the different drills you do for your sports will provide not only skill practice, but also increases in whatever attributes you need for that sport. Playing football, no matter what sport it is, okay, practicing your sport will give you the vast majority of conditioning you need. As a football player, you're doing a lot of sprints, you're doing a lot of tackling, doing a lot of throwing, a lot of kicking, and all the things you need to play your position as a football player. If you are a kickboxer, a Muay Thai fighter, punching, kicking, etc., you don't really necessarily need to train power exercises in order to get that power transfer, because when you do your sport, those movements you're doing, if you're a basketball player, you're going to be jumping a lot. Okay, jumping is something you do on a frequent basis when you're playing basketball. Do you really need to train jump training? Maybe that will help, right? Maybe it'll boost your performance. But because you're getting all of those aspects of performance training in the actual sport, the jumping in the basketball, the sprinting in the football, the the explosive takedowns as a wrestler. You don't necessarily need to be doing extra extra conditioning exercises for power or for sprinting, etc. Especially if you're very, very low on time. You're a type of person that works a full-time job in addition to your sport. It's kind of just a waste of time to be doing like cardio with weights, or a lot of times running takes up so much time and it beats a lot of people up. And they don't really need to be doing that because they're getting a lot of aerobic threshold work in their actual sport. Anyway, so that's why that's number one, because you're getting the best of both worlds, the best bang for your buck. As far as like endurance, stamina, conditioning, and even power, you get that from your sport training itself. So you don't need to be doing plyometrics and all these other more advanced training methods. It's not an essential, but it'll probably help, which I'm going to get into here in a little bit. But this is Mark Rippetoes' philosophy, not mine. So the second part to this is strength training. Why in the world would we do strength training on the side of our sport practice, and instead of doing running, doing like circuits to boost your endurance and glycolytic, lactic capacity work and things of that nature? Why are we choosing strength training? Well, first of all, let's define strength training. Mark Rippetoe generally is known for 5x5. So that's squat, bench, deadlift, 5 times a week. And I personally don't think that's a good idea for an athlete, unless you can fit that in there and you can recover from it, which can be challenging for most people. And you don't know what you can recover from until you've already done it for 4 weeks, because that's when your body starts to adapt. But strength training is simply, we're going to define it as barbell training in the 1 to maybe 8 rep range, 1 to 8 rep range, working within approximately 80 to 100% of your 1 rep max. To me, that's going to be my working definition of strength training. Any kind of barbell movement that's being worked within 80 to 100% of your 1 rep max for 1 to 8 reps, that's going to boost your overall force production. So why does Mark Rippetoe believe that strength training should be the main source of performance training outside of the sport itself and not conditioning and blah, blah, blah? Well, the reason why is because strength training, what adaptation it is producing in the body is increasing your body's ceiling of force production, okay? So what you have to understand is, force can be expressed faster, like sprinting, or like doing an explosive takedown. That's force produced over a short duration of time. Force produced really quickly with a high velocity, okay? Throwing a really powerful kick. That's force produced quickly. Running a long distance is force produced over a long duration of time, okay? It's still force, it's just being expressed differently. Jumping, that's force produced quickly with a high velocity. In your sports training, you're getting all of that, okay? You're getting the endurance, you're getting the power. The thing is, how much force you can produce has a limit, okay? And that limit can be increased with strength training. So you can do all the power training you want, and depending on what power training you're doing, it might produce your maximum force capacity, your force ceiling directly, it might. But nothing increases your capacity to produce force faster or more efficiently than strength training, as I defined already in this video. And so the idea is, since you can train power, you can train endurance, you can train all of those things practicing your actual sport while also practicing the skills and getting better at the skills, doing extra training on the side to increase those attributes is kind of a waste of time, according to Mark Rippetoe. However, strength training is a stimulus that you cannot get through practicing your sport. And it's heavily discouraged in most sports, you know, to muscle your way through. And you hear that a lot in combat sports, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, etc. The only problem is that they look at strength through a very dogmatic lens. They think in terms of bodybuilding and bullshit like that, but they don't understand the actual mechanistic science behind the value of strength training, right? And so, since you don't actually get this type of strength training where you're increasing the overall ceiling for your body to produce force through your actual sport, but you're getting everything else through your actual sport, that's why barbell exercises are so beneficial. Not only are barbell exercises one of the safest methods of doing this, contrary to popular belief, you're more likely to get injured practicing your sport than you are doing like a heavy back squat, within reason, obviously, as long as your form is good. And if you got injured doing that, then you're either lifting more weight than you probably should, or you're doing way too high of reps, which is performing complicated exercise under fatigue, or your form probably sucks. But strength training directly increases your overall limit to produce force. So you can only produce as much force as your overall limit allows, and strength training directly increases that limit. So let's say you start off with a 100-pound back squat, okay? You can only jump so high because your ability to produce force is so low at that point. Let's say you increase your back squat to 200 pounds. Your force capacity, your overall ceiling, your limit to produce force has doubled. You can now produce double the amount of maximum force because you doubled your back squat. And we're talking force within that movement pattern and within any movement pattern that comes close to it. So back squatting is one of the fastest ways to improve your vertical jump. And if you don't believe me, just ask the guy with the Guinness Book of Records for the highest vertical jump. He actually directly credited his like 500 or 600 pound back squat to his world record vertical. And I don't know if maybe the record changed, but this was a couple of years ago that I saw that. Anyway, this is the number one value of strength training for athletes, and this is why. Okay, it's because you're increasing your capacity, your limit to produce force, and that's all there is to it. If you go from a 100-pound back squat to a 300-pound back squat, sprinting is going to be easier for you. You'll require less effort to go at the same speed. You'll require less effort to pick the same weights up, to pick the same amount of, to do all the movements you do as a wrestler, grabbing a single leg, tackling someone in football, being able to continuously jump and do all the athletic movements you normally do in your sport is going to be so much easier for you. You're going to be able to push your own weight around a lot more efficiently because your body has adapted to be able to resist so much more force. So that's a two-factor model. And obviously, we are directly strengthening your ligaments, increasing bone mineral density, which is all going to help you prevent injury and be healthier overall throughout the rest of your life. You increase your conditioning through strength training because, again, movements that used to require a lot of effort start to become easier. Okay, so you're not improving your heart's capacity, right? You're not improving your cardio doing strength training, but you're improving your body's level of effort required to do athletic movements. Okay, more force being able to be produced from your legs means easier runs, more force capacity in your bench press. Okay, stronger bench press means everything that has to do with the pressing motion becomes easier. It takes less effort out of you, which increases your conditioning independent of your cardiovascular fitness. That's a very it should be a simple thing to understand, but most people don't understand it. They think it needs to be more complicated or something. Okay, so and what are my opinions on this? My opinion is, first of all, this is the most efficient way of training, but it should not be looked at dogmatically, because I was training under this dogma for about like 1 to 2 years. I was kind of like, oh, you don't need all this extra cardio, you don't need power training, blah blah blah. But the thing is, if you're low on time, right, and you don't have much time, and you have to choose very carefully what training, what time, like what you spend your time on, the two-factor model should be the foundation. Okay, you should do strength training, but you should do mostly your sport. You don't have enough time to be spending on things that don't really contribute significantly to your progress. Strength training is the number one thing that's going to produce the most benefit to your sports performance at a baseline, outside of practicing your sport. Now, if you add, power cleans, snatches, which, Mark Rippetoes recommends power cleans, but if you add plyometric training, if you start to add, maybe like 2 sessions of conditioning, like 1 high intensity interval training session and then 1 like long steady state run, on top of your strength training, as long as you can recover from that, it's likely going to benefit you. And most people who do aerobic conditioning, people who do long distance running, they do kind of like light interval training, or if they do sprint intervals, 100-meter relays and stuff like that, they all report significant benefits to their sports performance. The only negative side effect people report from doing more conditioning is joint pains and being unable to recover from it. And obviously, most of the scientific literature suggests conditioning is only going to help you, but that's within your capacity to recover from it. So, my opinion is start with the two-factor model, aim to practice your sport as much as possible, and then do strength training on top of it to complement your sport. And once you have a good strength routine going on top of your sport schedule, then you can add some extra endurance work or something like that, and then add some kind of power exercise on top of your strength training. For example, you can do if you're starting out, you do starting strength, the 5 sets of 5 squat, bench, deadlift, and then after that you can get on the Concept 2 rower, which is a cardio equipment using the rowing muscles, and you can do 5 rounds of like 1 minute each, with like a 1 minute rest or something. Or you can do 3 rounds of your fastest 500 meter on it or something like that. Or you can just do 10 minutes of sprint intervals on a treadmill or out at the track, but after your strength training. And what that will do is it'll give you the best of all worlds. You're doing your strength work and that's going to increase your maximum force capacity. Then you go out and you get your conditioning from the sprints or whatever, and then you practice your sport. You could do drills, you could do whatever it is that you're doing. Practice the skills if you're feeling beat up. As long as you can recover from it, that's the key. But strength training combined with your sport should probably be number 1. Anyway, that's the two-factor model. Mark Rippetoes generally believes that plyometrics and all that stuff is a waste of time. I don't think so. I think it's good, but I think strength training is number 1. People think doing like fucking one-legged squats on a Bosu Ball should be the main source of an athlete's training, and that's a fallacy. That's the one thing I think is ridiculous. However, if you believe the Bosu Ball is beneficial, you can maybe do that after your squats, or I guess do a couple for your warm-up. I guess just try not to waste too much time on that, because the majority of your stability and balance and core improvements are going to come from the big lifts combined with unilateral training, and that's something Mark Rippetoes doesn't talk about. Single leg squats, single leg deadlifts, unilateral deadlifts, step ups, like heavy step ups on a single leg, reverse lunges, side lunges, lunges with a balance, done with heavy dumbbells. Those are my favorite. Split squats, Bulgarian split squats. those are way, way better for not only improving force production on one leg, not only improving your performance on one leg, which is essential for all sports, but also working those smaller muscles in your ankles and your foot, your knee and your hip. That's going to produce way better stability, balance, and injury prevention adaptations than doing like light ass body weight training on a freaking Bosu ball. So do your Bosu ball if you must, but you should make the priority your big lifts, your unilateral lifts and movements, and then do your freaking Bosu ball nonsense. So anyway, that's my opinion on the two-factor model and on the other bullshit. So Mark Rippetoes right, but he's a little bit too dogmatic to be entirely right. I think single leg training and all that shit is beneficial. So leave your question and comments down below. Tell me what you think, and I'll talk to y'all next time.